Good afternoon. My name is Craig Hartley, and I have the good fortune of serving as the Executive Director for the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, or CALEA. And we, in conjunction with Power DMS, welcome you here at this webinar this afternoon, where we're going to provide some information that we hope is beneficial to accreditation managers and those that are interested in learning more about CALEA accreditation and how it benefits law enforcement agencies. Although that we know that many of you may already know a lot about the accreditation process, we always think it's good to start from a historical perspective and let organizations and individuals know that CALEA has been in existence for over 35 years. And in those 3 decades, we've come to represent or enroll over 25% of the law enforcement agencies' personnel in the United States. And we also have a footprint internationally with accrediting agencies in Canada, Mexico, Royal Barbados, and other organizations and other international venues use CALEA accreditation for technical assistance in a number of ways. The focus of accreditation programming with CALEA really is to provide service that promotes the ongoing professional advancement of public safety agencies. And I think that's really important to pay attention to, because CALEA's model is really not about catching agencies doing things wrong, but really about finding strategies to help agencies engage in continuous improvement, really in the name of promoting professionalism and public safety overall. And this includes law enforcement agencies, communication agencies, training academies, and more recently, campus security organizations. CALEA has tried to be responsible and add opportunities for organizations to participate in accreditation, not just in one program, but also in multiple accreditation programming. As late as this year, we've introduced multiple accreditation programming where organizations may participate as subsidiary programs of law enforcement programs to make it easier to engage in law enforcement, communications, and/or training academy accreditation. We encourage you to contact your regional program manager if you have more questions about that. It's also important to know from a practitioner perspective and also from the leadership perspective that CALEA promulgates standards. We require the development of complementary policies, and then we assess agencies to ensure standards, policies, and practices are all complementary, with a real focus on intended outcomes, thereby promoting organizational professionalism. The process not only promotes professionalism, it also improves accountability, provides sound direction for staff, and really allows for a stronger community connectivity and organizational transparency. And it really serves as a real blueprint for service and resource management. In the event of litigation that may unfortunately arise, CALEA accreditation serves as a demonstration of adherence to best practices and can be used as a mitigation of liability and organizational risk. And there's countless examples on our website under the accreditation works link that can provide examples of this for those that are interested in learning about how accreditation has benefited agencies not only in the United States, but as well in Canada and Mexico and more internationally in places like Barbados. And although the process provides a real opportunity to symbolically demonstrate organizational effectiveness and efficiencies, the most important concept, at least from my perspective and that of the Commission, is that it's a tool that serves as a platform for dynamic agencies aspiring to really be the very best they can be now and also in the future as changes certainly face each of us. Fortunately, when you hang around a process like this long enough, you get to meet a number of individuals who have a real passion for the profession. And today we have a couple of panelists that are going to be with us to help in that. The first panelist we have today is Mr. Rob Sophie, who serves as the accreditation manager for Douglas County Sheriff's Office. Rob retired after 30 years of law enforcement services in the state of Washington, serving as a patrol officer, intelligence officer, detective, detective sergeant, lieutenant commander, police chief, and Rob held supervisory command positions from '86 to 2004, including the last 6 years as police chief. Rob's education and formal training includes a bachelor's degree in law and justice, both the FBI National Academy and Command College, and is a graduate of the Washington Association of Sheriff's Police Chiefs Leadership Institute. Her certifications achieved include supervisory, middle management, executive certifications. Rob is the past president of the County Sheriff's and Police Chiefs Association, served on state criminal justice training commission boards, law enforcement standards and training boards, and instructed for the Regional Training Association. We also have with us today Ms. Melissa Dixon from Power DMS, and she's been with Power DMS for over 7 years now and has served in a variety of roles within the company, from customer support to sales, and is now a member of the training and implementation team. Melissa enjoys teaching webinars, creating training videos and materials, and answering the phone and helping out for anyone that she can. Her goal as a trainer is to help you be successful with Power DMS, and she asks you to ask questions wherever possible. I have to say that CALEA and Power DMS is engaged in an affinity agreement because we firmly believe that CALEA is the experts in standards development and policy management for public safety agencies, but we also think that Power DMS is the expert in the fields of software to help manage the accreditation process. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob Sophie to start presentation. But as we do that, you may have questions that come up during the meeting, and we'd ask that you'd enter those into the field in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen where you might be able to post a question. And as we reach the end of the presentation, we'll try to field as many of those questions as we can. So thanks again for being here today. And Rob, I'd ask you to help me out now.
Thanks, Executive Director Hartley, and welcome to everyone attending today's webinar. While I give an intro here, Melissa's going to post a poll in which she's going to inquire about the types of folks that are in our audience today. I also want to give a big thank you out to Power DMS and particularly Nicole Roach for arranging and producing this today. We are very encouraged by the great number of practitioners who signed up to attend. It's my great pleasure to work alongside of the fabulously famous Melissa Dixon, with whom I've had the distinct pleasure of attending dozens of Power DMS webinars she has instructed. In fact, I would characterize myself as an avid fan and power attendee of her excellent webinars. If you haven't already attended one of her many webinars that she conducts every month, you're missing a really great way to learn more ways to optimize and enhance your own use of DMS. I'll talk about the poll here real quick before I introduce the top 10 there, Melissa.
Yes, thank you so much, Rob. Looks like the poll that I just launched should be up on your screen, and already 84% of you have taken the time to vote, so I do appreciate that. And so we'll just give you a few more moments to answer that. And basically, it's just asking where you are in the accreditation process and who our audience is so we can get to know a little bit more about you. There's quite a few of you out there, and we do appreciate you taking the time to join us. The question is just where you are currently in the accreditation process. So are you seeking initial CALEA accreditation, seeking CALEA reaccreditation, or are you a new accreditation manager? We did set it up as a multiple answer, so you should be able to check more than one if that applies to you. So if you're a new accreditation manager seeking reaccred or initial accreditation, then that could be, you can certainly check off both of those. So right now, about 94% of you have voted, so I do appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and close it out and share the results with you so you can see that you are among friends. So you should actually see this on your screen. It looks like about 12% of you are seeking your initial CALEA accreditation. 80% of you are seeking CALEA reaccreditation, and then 23% of you are new accreditation managers. So welcome to everyone, and we do hope that our session today is beneficial to you and that you'll be able to pick up a few new tips and tricks regarding the accreditation process as we go through. So I'm going to go ahead and hide that, and then we'll go ahead and scoot along. Are you ready to go, Rob?
I am.
All right, perfect. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip over that. We're going to go to the top 10, which Rob is going to share with us.
All right, hey, to kick things off today, as you've seen on, no doubt seen on Sports Center every day, we have one version of a top 10 accreditation best practices. Melissa and I will be tag teaming on each of these 10 accreditation best practices from our differing but complementary perspectives, and then we'll open up for a Q&A. So, having said that, our objective today is to help you and your agency avoid the dreaded CALEA-oscopy, as accreditation was affectionately referred to prior to my own arrival here in Omaha. Sorry, Craig. First up is Melissa with number 1.
All right, and as Rob mentioned, we will not be using the term CALEA-oscopy. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out with our number 1 tip, which is to assess what you actually have to do. As you all know, there are quite a few standards, but some of them may not apply to your agency. In Power DMS specifically, you can put them as NA. Also in the paper process, you can do that as well. So you kind of want to make sure that as you're getting started, that that you assess what you actually need to do and not get intimidated with everything if it doesn't apply to you. So that's our first tip. Rob, did you have anything experience-wise that you wanted to add to that?
I do. I would add some cautions from my own on-site travels, especially if you inherited the AM or the accreditation manager experience from someone. Real quickly, there's two types of NAs. The first one is by agency size, and these primarily apply to A-sized agencies, which is 1 to 24 full-time personnel or so, and it's in the law enforcement program. The second and much more common type is the NA by function. And from my experience, it's not so unusual for the mock or regular assessor to question your NAs, only to hear the AMs explain that, hey, it was on the past ISSR as an NA and it was signed off, in which I understand why you wouldn't expect not to be able to do the same. And you sometimes will even ask, why? So why is it a problem now? But our experienced listeners will know where I'm headed with this. If you didn't participate in the previous on-site, you were just newly appointed, you may have missed some of the behind-the-scenes discussions that occur on those things. Maybe some promises that were kept, not kept. Also, some CALEA standards have changed. The examples I cite most are 2.1.3, which is mutual aid, and Chapter 3, which is contractual services. The rules have changed a little bit on those, and so what might have been an NA in the past is no longer an NA. And I hate to say this, and I'm sure none of you believe this, but unfortunately there's also occasionally some assessor inconsistency in the NA interpretations, and so the bottom line of it is you're going to want to verify, probably with your CALEA program manager, and I would also recommend having your mock team look at your NAs as well. It's better to learn earlier than during the actual on-site assessment itself.
Rob, if I can add to that real quickly too, I think from a real practical perspective that we often have discussions here at CALEA about the applicability of standards based on those criteria that you've defined. But because the process is really about risk mitigation and coming up with strategies to help organizations improve, I would always argue for let's move away from strict interpretation and really talk about whether that standard is applicable to the agency for the purpose of reducing risk or improving professionalism. And if those particular things exist, then it's the responsibility of the organization to really look at that critically and get the most return on investment from the process they can. So strive not to find reasons not to comply, but find reasons to comply because it's the right thing to do.
Well said. Those are the kinds of things that I've been seeing in CALEA lately, working hard to bring value to the org as opposed to mere compliance or trying to get out of another standard. So, all right, number 2, have a plan. I can unequivocally attest that the lack of or a poorly planned accreditation or reaccreditation plan is easily the single largest contributor I have seen to a less than optimal accreditation or reaccreditation on-site. Occasionally even you hear of fatals as a result of it. By way of explanation, I often speak of the enormity of accreditation in the law enforcement industry and profession. And by enormity, I'm suggesting that accreditation as a program or a project really has no peer of equal size and agency-wide impact. It touches all aspects of the law enforcement organization. And as such, it's deserving of very strong planning. You might even say enormous planning. The best model I'm aware of, one that I subscribe to myself even after all these many years of being in the business, is a reverse calendar. I've attached a copy there of my own year timetable or reverse calendar. And as you can see, I know it's small print, but it works backward from your hopeful conference award date. So you start with your target date that you plan to get your award at. You know that it's going to be several months prior to that when you have your on-site, and hopefully we're going to talk a little bit about mocks later on, but you're going to have your mock 4 to 6 months prior to that, et cetera, working backwards all the way to the start date of your most recent on-site. And a reaccreditation plan or accreditation plan will help mitigate external pressures. Refer to it as Murphy's Law of CALEA. There will be no real police work going on, or there will be real police work going on, your guys will say, and they don't have time for these kinds of things. And then also be some disaster or some triple homicide, et cetera, to kind of compound those who are not already in your organization or not exactly your most motivated proof providers to start with. And you've got all these external pressures building on. And you know your agency. So I suggest you build in additional time and an extra month on each of the event target dates in your plan, particularly if you're blessed with having one or more of those infamous black holes where policies go for review and they never come out and never to be seen again. That's the whole notion there. Melissa? Anything to add on that?
I think you had that one spot on. Craig, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, one of the things I want to talk about too is because the accreditation manager role can be such a strong professional development piece, meaning that you can put people in those roles and then they learn so much about the organization, they're very marketable for other positions, other leadership roles in the organization as time moves on. I think a real critical part of any plan like this is to have a succession plan so that it doesn't leave the new person coming in to assume those duties really in a spot of trying to recover from what otherwise may be a good plan. It's really about planning for the next person who's going to assume those roles in order to help support the organization.
Yeah, along those lines, I often talk about how it takes 3 full cycles, or almost 10 years, to get it right. And that's if all the constants are in place, such as the same CEO, the same accreditation manager. Your learning curve is hugely vertical. Every one of you know that out there who's been through this. The ones who are just coming in, congratulations. You're going to learn a lot.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd add to that too, Rob, is I think in kind of honor of the relationship that we have with Powered EMS, even though this reverse timeline is spot on, that largely the Powered EMS application can do some of these things for you by scheduling events and duties and responsibilities. And I know it's kind of a movement away from kind of a manual process, but it really does help you in terms of managing the process in a way that makes sense in an effective way that really allows you to involve others too.
Yeah, if I could actually piggyback on that, especially when it comes to now what we're talking about a lot today is the CALEA portion and standards, but as far as policy and procedure management, that is Powered EMS's strength, and you can set Powered EMS up to manage your policies, to set reminders for you to review your policies on the dates and time frames as well as workflows that you need. So you can definitely utilize Powered EMS to your advantage in many different ways. So we certainly would encourage that as well if you're using Powered EMS. Are you guys ready to go to the next one?
Go for it.
All right, here we go. Number 3 is actually something that I find really funny, but also really true, which is you can only eat an elephant 1 bite at a time. Actually, one of my accreditation managers that I had the privilege of talking with at a conference mentioned this, and it just really struck me as really funny and true, that when you first look at the task before you, it looks like a whole lot, but as if you were eating an elephant, you would only take 1 bite at a time. You're not going to eat the whole thing. So certainly take your time to go through the assessment 1 standard at a time. Make sure you stay organized. And you will get it done, and it can be done. So sometimes it can just be intimidating when you're at the foot of the mountain, but start climbing. That's the way to get through. And I'm sure that Rob and Craig certainly have some knowledge to add to that. So feel free.
I would add, this is clearly an excellent visual example of the impacts of the enormity of CALEA I was just discussing in number 2 under having a plan. There's no question it can feel very overwhelming at times. Well, how's that for an all-time understatement? But effective accreditation managers redefine the label multitask, and in doing so, they prove they're up to the enormous challenge. And as Craig alluded to there, there's a reason why so many sworn accreditation managers get promoted. They have a proven ability to manage this enormity.
Robin, the other thing I'd add to it as well is that CALEA has worked, again, to try to be as client-centric as possible, knowing that each organization has different interest in the accreditation process, maybe with the same goal, but maybe different capacities, different timelines, and those types of things. So several years ago, we moved away from just one choice in the accreditation model for law enforcement agencies, and we provide accreditation, law enforcement accreditation, and we also provide advanced law enforcement accreditation. So kind of to complement this slide, I always encourage newly enrolled agencies to start off with the law enforcement accreditation standards first, and it gives you at least a milestone to meet along your march to the full advanced law enforcement accreditation. And importantly with that is that those law enforcement accreditation standards, the 189 standards as recently as last week, I think, really are life, health, safety type of standards that are critical to the functioning of any law enforcement agency in today's environment. So in short, knock off the 188, 189 standards first and use that as a tool on the way to the 480 some standards that we have for the full advanced law enforcement accreditation.
Excellent. Rob, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Oh, ready to move on.
All righty. So number 4 is, and I'll go ahead and wait till it pops up for you. Bear with me for just a sec. All right, and that is to use your due dates to your advantage. As with CALEA accreditation, a lot of times working with accreditation managers, you know, you have to set up proofs every year, and a lot of folks just naturally say, you know what, I'm just going to set it up for January 1st is the following year. I have all my proofs for this year. I'm going to set them up for January 1st. And January 1st comes the following year, and you get hit with X amount of tasks, and they all hit on the same day, and you feel a little bit overwhelmed on that January 1st or January 2nd, whatever you set it at. And what I would encourage you to do is set up your due dates or your timelines, whether you're using an electronic format like Power DMS or you're using a paper format, to spread them out throughout the calendar, especially ones that maybe you couldn't even do January 1st, if, for example, like your oath of office or something like that. So you want to make sure you spread them out so that you're not being hit with an onslaught of different standards on the first day of the year. Spread them out throughout the year, depending on your preference and depending on how you're all set up. There's not one way to do it, but certainly feel free to spread it out so that you can actually kind of keep biting that elephant rather than having another elephant join you the following year. And I'm sure, Rob, you probably have some knowledge to add to that as well.
Yeah, there's a very proven model out there, and what I call an ARS, Administrative Reporting System for your time-sensitive activities. Obviously, there's one in Appendix E in the CALEA manual, what I would consider a somewhat simple, very basic template. But you know, typically in my travels, I see that every agency has some form of administrative reporting system as it complies with standard 1143 in the law enforcement. But there's also, in my travels, a very clear distinction between agencies that do this well and those that don't, and that's the enforcement of the ARS. The ones who do well in the on-sites are blessed to have strong CEO and senior command support to push those folks who might tarry a tad on getting their time sensitives in, or any other kinds of responsible administrative reporting pieces. But again, the clear distinction is those who run this have one and then do it well, and they keep it on the forefront. So that's part of your responsibility as an accred manager. Recommend making it part of your reaccreditation plan. Build it right into it. And then you get your CEO and agency buy-off on the plan. And usually when he or she says this is law, it's going to be followed. But it's important for you to also keep that thing frequently updated. I do mine daily, and I leave it on a common drive. And you have to somehow get that on other people's front burners, the people who are responsible for doing those time-sensitive reports. I publish mine every January 1st. I post it on Power DMS, which is an excellent tool for getting this out. I do it twice a month, on the 1st and the 16th. Obviously, you got to maintain relations with my folks here, so I can walk down the hallway. My wife, to keep me from getting beat up, puts out CALEA cookies every week. But I also send out reminders several times to the people saying, hey, you know I got to turn that thing on the 1st and 16th. It's going on DMS. If you're late, it's going to show. What can I do to help you out and get it done? Sometimes I'll send them the previous one they did. Sometimes I'll darken their doorway the day before and say, hey, you know it's going to go out, and you want some help on it. You got to strike that nice balance between having to what I call police the police and encourage willing adherence. Bottom line of it is, though, in the end of things, you have a job to do, and you can't let them cause you to fail, because the finger's going to be pointed at you. So I really, really strongly advocate not only the use of an ARS, but keeping it frequently updated on their front burner and making sure or having your CEO enforce it for you.
You know, Rob, that's a great solution. The ARS is there. But, you know, it's also important to think about the practical application of the standard as it relates to some of these things. For example, there's a requirement for an annual pursuit analysis, And we recognize that organizations can set that timeline how they wish. I mean, they can do it on a fiscal year, they can do it on a calendar year, they can do it however they want to accomplish that. But at the same time, we've had some agencies that struggle with the completion of those types of documents within an appropriate amount of time. For example, they'll do the pursuit analysis in July each year when they use data that's related back to the prior calendar year. And you got to keep in focus that the purpose of those types of analyses is to really inform the chief executive officer and other in decision-making roles about what new training might be needed, what new equipment might be needed, what new policy implications are there, or if there's new legislative implications associated with those types of issues or judicial findings. And so when we're talking about doing these types of administrative reporting systems, we need to be sensitive to the fact that the pursuit analysis, as an example, is not just a thing to accomplish, but it's really a tool for moving the organization forward and making sure that your staff has good equipment, good training, and are in a contemporary position to make good decisions as it relates to pursuits and those types of activities.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Craig. Rob, did you have anything else to add, or are we ready to scoot on to the next one?
Ready to go.
All right. The next one, number 5, is to bring in subject matter experts. So if you can, you have folks in their areas of expertise. If you can have them send attachments to you or upload them into Power DMS, or if you're doing paper process, provide them to you. The idea is to try not to take everything on personally, and to bring in folks to assist you. I think Rob mentioned cookies. We strongly encourage that. So definitely feel free to utilize folks within your organization that can send the attachments to you, even though it is your responsibility ultimately. The idea is to bring in folks that's their area of expertise, so you're not playing kind of a guessing game. Rob, did you want to add to that one?
Yeah, for those of you who know me, you know there's green frosting on those cookies too, by the way. No, regarding the internal SMEs, it just makes good sense to have your IA folks reviewing the IA standards and your criminal investigations folks reviewing Chapter 42 on CID, and your property and evidence folks doing 84. It just makes good sense, and it also helps if you have them review their affected written directives annually to ensure that their actual practices match policy. I go to a lot of places where their practices match, but their policies haven't been updated in a long time, and they have outdated policies listed on same thing. Same thing happened on my mock last week. So I mean, it's annually need to have them at least check those written directives. Right now at the DCSO here, we're exploring how to add time-sensitive tasks to Power DMS, and having them show up in their inbox. Hey, you have an inspection due, or you have an evaluation due, or any other kind of time-sensitive activity. It'll go right to them, and I'm pretty excited about that. And we're also going to talk about some external subject matter experts here in number 6 below. So.
And I think largely that, Rob, you might agree with this, is that the natural inclination of most accreditation managers, and having been one, guilty as charged, I guess, you want to control as much of that as you can. Within the Power DMS application, when you start using the standards module, it really does provide you a way to control that while involving others in a real healthy way that really integrates them into the process, and you get to leverage that subject matter expertise. It puts it in their inbox to take care of. It makes them responsible for the duties. It gives you a way to receive feedback, and at the same time give you control over approval as the accreditation manager as to whether it meets the CALEA model, if you will, for generating standards compliance. So pretty powerful position to sit in, and that technology really provides you a way to make that happen in a way that makes sense in today's environment.
Else, Melissa?
What was that, Rob?
Anything else from you before we move on to 6?
Nope. I'm going to go ahead and scoot on to 6 if you're ready.
Okay. 6, we're going to talk about visiting other accredited agencies. In addition to the internal SMEs Melissa spoke of in number 5, there's also tons of great external SME resources out there. And I can say this unequivocally as well. In my 40 years in this industry, I've found that those assigned to accreditation have proven to be easily the most sincerely willing to help others out. even when I was in NARC assignments and other kinds of things where your life kind of depended on it. There's just a great willingness to help everybody else out, and it's unmatched in our industry. So I suggest active PAC involvement, and I'm not talking about just membership, but active involvement, meeting attendance. And when you go to these meetings, take the issues that you're struggling with or that have caused you the most consternation, and take a list of them with you and bring them up in the open sessions and those things. I mean, there's no single one right way to set up your standards or assessments, and go in those meetings. If nothing else, it also gives you a place to commiserate with your fellow AMs who are also in the same predicament. CALEA conference attendance. Yeah, they're difficult if you're on a tight budget, but they certainly afford a lot of opportunities. And in addition to the classrooms, I feel like the hearings are some of the best place to draw information when you watch the areas where I don't call them grillings anymore. It's a kinder, gentler nation. All the heavy lifting's done on Fridays now. Before, if you have had a difficult on-site, but yet there's still a holding of the agencies, holding them accountable, and you learn a lot in those environments. And even on the host nights, doesn't have to be all business or all non-business. They're all social. I learn a lot there from these folks, listening to their other stories and the things that the challenges they're faced with. Visiting other accredited agencies, observing their Power DMS setups and their naming conventions and their proofing types. There's just a lot to learn that way, and you never do know it all here. The CALEA and PAC forums. Personally, I think these are underused. There's a lot of great questions that are asked on the CALEA forum pretty regularly, and I'd like to see it used more. Sometimes it seems like there's only a handful, or sometimes I'll look at it and there'll be 55 views of something but no input or no response back, and I don't really get that, but I encourage you to get on there, take a look at it, and even if it's not something you're wrestling with at the moment, hey, take a look at how your agency does that, and you might come up with a few good ideas. I know I do all the time. And finally, well, a couple more here. One is I get often asked by my command staff to query the CALEA Nation, as they call it. And they know that I'll put out an inquiry on any kind of an issue that they're dealing with, from body cams to court security. Doesn't matter what it is. And they'll have 20 responses in 20 minutes. They'll have 50 responses by the next afternoon, and pretty soon they come to me with their fingers crossed saying, you know, we give up, Uncle, no more, please. But the CALEA Nation is incredibly helpful for an external resource there. And then finally, I suggest getting out there and observing agency mock assessments. Invite yourself, be aggressive to observe, take an active role in there, and again, take your top 10 or so issues that you're struggling with or wrestling with in your own agency, or that you haven't got quite refined yet, and you'll see a lot of different styles, and spend some time with each of the mock assessors. We all do things just a little bit differently, looking to arrive at the same place. Hey, does the agency have some compliance risks here or concerns, and some best practices that we can make suggestions on, and listening to the exchange going on in the room between all the mock assessors and their varied travels. Sometimes you have hundreds of years of mock or on-site experience in that room, and just listening by osmosis, you'll learn a lot. And I kind of liken it to a promotion analogy before I turn it over to Melissa here. I took all these promotion exams for sergeant, lieutenant, and commander, and even chief, and yeah, you come better after you take a few more of them. But once you've sat on the other side of the table as a promotion assessor, and you see the benchmarks that you want the candidates to hit, the next time you take your test, you're a much better candidate, because now you can mentally click off those benchmarks and you're hitting them. And the same thing applies to the assessment side. If you see it from the eyes of an assessor, and you can recognize it, what will it take for them to buy off and sign off on compliance, you're a much better cred manager.
Melissa, if it's okay with you, I got just a couple of comments on this slide, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, Rob hit the nail on the head a couple of times in here, and one of the things I want you to be real aware of is PAC. I want to make sure you know what that stands for. It stands for Police Accreditation Coalition. But really, we've moved far beyond that as an institution. And, you know, we do accreditation for communications and training academies, campus security organizations, and we're even looking beyond that now because of the connectivity between the private security industry. So that police acronym in front of that really needs to be de-emphasized because it's really an accreditation coalition for any of those types of programs. I also want to make sure that folks know that there's a lot of information that can provide this type of assistance through the web access through CALEA at www.calea.org. But you got to have your client ID number and create yourself as an authorized user as a client inside that environment. So please do that. And once you're there, there's a couple of resources. Rob mentioned the forum. One of the things that we struggle with in the forum is when we post standards, we need feedback from clients, folks that are living and breathing the process, because it helps the commission make decisions about the promulgation of standards. And another resource that's there is the policy library. It kind of works in the same vein as your connectivity with some of your PAC information there because you share policies, and the portal is set up so that clients can see that, and you can do surveys in there by the type of standard that you're looking at, program, standard number, agency size, agency type, so that if you're a sheriff's office in the Midwest, you can certainly find another sheriff's office in the Midwest who may have a similar policy or operates in a similar environment. And finally, about PACs, wonderful tool, great network of individuals who are always willing to help you. The only cautionary note is sometimes organizations struggle with an assessment process, and because this is really a personal issue for folks that are involved, information gets released about a portion of an assessment that can really kind of jaundice some PACs sometimes without the full information. And so if you receive information like that, I would encourage you to ask the agency itself, what really happened there? You know, how did it go, what occurred? Because there's some learnings associated with that, and use it for positive growth for the organization. I will tell you that the Commission is in the process now of reviewing terms like noncompliance and applied discretion and file maintenance, and potentially moving away from those because they can be polarizing and they're not necessarily in keeping with the notion that we want to make sure it serves as a tool for continuous development and not necessarily a way of exposing weaknesses, if you will. So just know that the Commission is remaining client-centric and looking at those types of things and their impacts as we move forward.
Melissa?
Awesome. Thank you. You ready to go, Rob?
I just want to point out one last picture on number 6 there. I tried to find the one that had depicted Sheriff Dunning almost asleep. Just kidding. All right, number 7.
All right, here comes number 7.
All right, selling accreditation up the chain of command. This is so hugely important, and often I see it's not taken very good advantage of. Again, your best method is a quality, well planned out accreditation, reaccreditation plan, and complemented with an administrative reporting system where you, accreditation manager, provides regular updates onto the CEO and command staff, particularly the administrative reporting system. So reset, republish your reverse timeline, get it out there in front of them, and start with seeking planned buy-off at the time of your appointment. Or if we're already well past that, then I recommend each year regularly during your own performance evaluation review and during your annual Bureau Division goal setting, get accreditation and what you need visibly included in each one. We've even gone so far here as to try to figure out a way to add a dimension to the supervisors, command staff on their provision of proofs and compliance. Are they on time? Are they quality? Do they bring value to the org? So I mean, there's a lot of different methods, but it's important for you to seize that and to really push it. Again, CALEA PAC meetings and conferences, outside agency mock participation. They maximize your return for every conference you're able to get to go to. Make quality use of the hallway and hospitality sessions to tackle your list of concerns and issues. Every time I go to a CALEA conference, I make it a point to bring back something of potential value or a best practice my own agency. It sends a strong message that they're not wasting their money by sending me. I pay close attention to the Saturday hearings to see where agencies struggle and what they're doing well. And then I report on them when I return back to the agency, not as an, oh my God, but hey, there's an agency I saw doing this, and I think we have an opportunity here to enhance our own. So you mind if we consider that and we talk about it. And same thing, go to your CEO, hey, here's what I saw happen at the Saturday hearings to the CEO if they didn't have such a good one. If not, it's the wrong kind of reason, but if you got to put the fear of God into them, so be it. And then you bring them over to the intrinsic side. Be ready with a plan, though, on how to, and a suggestion on how to prevent this from occurring to your own agency. But, again, go out there with the idea of bringing home value and distinguish yourself from others in your agency who attend outside conferences, and that's not some boondoggle. Same thing at your mock conclusion. An interesting phenomena occurs during mocks, and it just happened in my own as well here. These so-called experts come in and quote unquote, and they tell your agency of potential deficiencies, which you go, God, I've been preaching those for the same thing for the months and years, and no one's listened. And all of a sudden, they have this credence and merit. And I'm here to say, get over it. It's the reality of how things work. And rather, be ready. Seize control of this short, open window of opportunity. You better be ready to leap seconds the mock is over. And I'm talking seconds, the length of time your window is open. You're one law enforcement or personnel incident away from closing, grabbing the CEOs and command people's attention. So if you need written directive revisions, which if you had a good mock, you will, you establish a 2-week timeline windows for staff and review of completion. Again, DMS workflow. I use the simple vote system. It really rocks for this. We give them a 2-week window. It's your chance to weigh in, and we're moving on. There's no black holes going on here. You should already have in your possession samples of great annual analyses that you would like yours to look like. So when these guys come in and say, hey, they're deficient, you've been telling them that all along, you now have examples to throw into their lap and say, hey, I like items 1 and 3 on this one and 2 and 4 on that one. What do you say? You're ready to add and integrate internal systems designed to better capture quality proofs of compliance. I'm sure every one of you has been handed a piece of paper which some other person said, this should be good enough, and you kind of know it isn't, and it's a little awkward for you. Maybe you don't have a position of authority in your org, but you've got to have the CALEA presence to be able to say, hey, this isn't going to cut it, and here's why. And here's some examples of some other agencies that will make this work. And whether you go to the CALEA library or you go to on-site or through your PAC or any other way, you need to be ready with those. And then finally, on your mock, I recommend asking your mock team to preach the merits of outside agency mock participation as a great way to grow your own accreditation program. Melissa?
Thanks. Craig, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think we're good there.
All right. I will say just kind of as a on the Power DMS side of things, I've actually had the privilege of working with lots of teams and have seen where when they've taken the time to sell it up the chain and how effective that can be to have that support and to know that they are supported in gaining or gaining accreditation or getting reaccredited, as the case may be. It's just, you can see that it's relieving for them to just have that support, and also really works well with our next slide that we're going to talk about, which is working as a team. And so what we're going to say here is if you are fortunate enough to have team members helping you, I know some accreditation managers are riding solo, as it may be, but a lot of times if you do sell it up the chain, you will be able to obtain some sort of team member, whether it's an intern or it's some folks within the agency that maybe can help you out. We do encourage you to use those folks. Don't be afraid to have them take ownership of different portions of the assessment, and also to utilize my area of expertise is Power DMS, of course. In Power DMS, you can actually assign chapters to folks and maybe have them kind of take ownership of that so you don't have to worry about it. The nice thing about assigning something to someone else is that you still do have ownership of it, and you're kind of going to give it your final stamp of approval, even though they're doing the kind of the legwork on it. So we do encourage you to work as a team and to kind of let go of some things if you can, let go of some of the standards and let folks help you out so that you don't feel like you have the whole world on your shoulders, as the case may be. Rob, did you want to go ahead and add to that one?
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I have found that I can perform the accreditation task a lot faster than having to teach or show and re-show. But it's worth it for those who want to get it. And clearly the agency is not best served by this model. The team approach definitely moves the accreditation program or integrated within the agency more towards an agency-wide accomplishment rather than just the CEO and the cred manager. Or around here with Sheriff Timothy Dunning and me, we call it the Robbie and Timmy show. We want it to be more than that. So I'm suggesting while it's probably more work, it's still worth it to spread what we like to call CALEA love throughout the entire org. And so in the model here, we use CALEA liaisons. And these are volunteers that I have actively solicited and targeted. These are personnel who want to be involved for the right reasons. They're motivated. Sometimes you can appeal to their motivation if they're on a promotional eligibility list looking to distinguish themselves prior to the selection, if there's like a rule of 3, as we often see out there. And I do my best to reward them with a break from regular duty during the mock or CALEA conference attendance if I'm able to do that. I ensure that I get them CEO face time as a volunteer. I have them come in and basically tell them, hey, if 2 people are tied, I mean identically tied on a promotion exam or a specialized assignment, they volunteered for something like this, that would give them the, maybe the nod. And so, and you might not be their best reasons at first, but you win them over once you get them in there.
Yeah, Rob, about 2 years or 3 years ago now, the Commission embarked on this thing called the Gold Standard Assessment Process. And that model, admittedly, was named that to draw attention to agencies who had an interest in being the best they could be. But the reality of it was that was a little bit of a marketing pitch because that's what the Commission wanted to see have happen. They didn't want it to be compartmentalized inside one institution of the organization, but rather they wanted it institutionalized across the entire organization where it involved more people. So we're moving even today to even stronger models where we're doing most of the file reviews off-site. Power DMS helps make that happen because we can go in remotely and provide support for agencies that way. But then when we get on-site to do the on-site piece of it, we get the stronger interactions to kind of trace down the practice as it relates to the policy, and we can really measure the outcomes. I mean, a good example of that is there's standards that specifically have to do with recruitment plans. Oftentimes, assessors will go into agencies and see that they have a good recruitment plan. They kind of went through the motions of doing what they suggested they were going to do, but it doesn't necessarily make any difference in the outcome of the objective there that was probably to increase female representation or minority representation or some other specific group that was underrepresented in the organization. And so in that regard, it didn't necessarily help the agency move forward. It became what I refer to as a paper tiger, which is not necessarily the intent of the process. But when you involve people at the different levels, then when the assessors are on site, they get to talk to people who actually performed the task and knew why they performed them, and it demonstrates to the Commission, who ultimately makes the decision about accreditation, that yeah, the process is working to support the agency as it moves forward and deals with contemporary issues.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig. Did you have anything else to add today, Rob, for that one? All right. I think the next one's yours.
All right. Well, sure it's mine or is yours?
Oh, it is mine. The next one is get a great mock assessor. So when you're pretty sure that you have all your ducks in a row, you're ready for at least a mock assessment. Certainly, and I think I will definitely have Rob speak to the time frame on this, but certainly reach out to a mock assessor or multiple mock assessors and have them take a look at everything that you've put into your assessment. With Power DMS, they can do that remotely. They don't have to come on site. They can just log into your Power DMS if you give them the credentials to do so. And they can take a look at all of your proofs and take a look at everything that you've put into your assessment and maybe give you some pointers of areas that might need a little bit more strength, and also kind of confirm your assessment of how things are going. So if you believe it's in compliance, they can come through and say, yes, indeed, I agree as well, and I know Rob kind of mentioned the strength of the community with accreditation managers and assessors. I've found nothing but supportive folks that would be more than happy to help you with mock assessments, even taking a look at yours. So Rob, if you want to kind of speak to that a little bit, that would be great.
Hey, you're looking at a picture of my most recent mock. Had 9 assessors and 4 observers and 3 or 4 liaisons in there, and so it's kind of a crowded room, and that's the model that I advocate. Now, not everybody has the resources to do what we have, and I'm very blessed here to have a very fat seizure fund. So you have to kind of go with what you got, but I just want to make sure I leave some points with you, though, that many years ago, CALEA identified the lack of a mock or a poorly conducted mock as a very significant reason why on-sites struggle and even fail. My response to that is, duh. Was a mock conducted? CALEA doesn't mandate it, and I'm often asked why they don't make it mandatory. And while I don't speak for CALEA or have an answer to that, I do strongly encourage and suggest that you should view it as absolutely mandatory. And then once you get past that, then it's the how to and when. How close to the on-site assessment did you conduct your mock? CALEA does recommend, and I absolutely concur, a minimum of 4 months and preferably 6 months prior to the on-site assessment. And it's important to understand CALEA's calendar too, and again, I'll speak for them, but generally speaking, and Craig, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is they run off the conferences. And so there's the 3 conferences annually, the July-August conference, the November conference, and a March conference. And so for the July-August conference, the on-sites are typically or generally March, April, and May. And for the November or July, August, and September, and for the March is October, November, and December. And they're generally not the last 2 weeks of the last month. And CALEA once told me that they can manage about 10 on-sites per week. And if you do the math, there's about 80 some to 110 each time at each conference. Again, do the math, that's about 2.5 months worth. And yeah, there's some exceptions. And then, so if you go in there on your plan thinking, hey, I'm going to get the last month like December, when those are already filled, when you're making a reverse calendar, whoops, now you've maybe lost a month or a month and a half. And so I suggest when you're setting your reverse calendar, view it as the earliest month in that period. And then if you get a farther one away, bonus. Again, the bottom line is you want to leave sufficient time to make your needed corrections and written directive changes, and those just take time. Who did you bring in to conduct your mock? Hopefully you're smart enough to bring in practitioners who have day-to-day working knowledge of the standards, and people who have who stay abreast of the ever-morphing changes and revisions and interpretations that are going on out there, and are paying attention to what agencies are struggling with. And then another question is how comprehensive was your mock? While Melissa spoke of a Power DMS remote mock, maybe that's all your funding will permit, but if you can find a way, I implore upon you to get people on site and to get people committed while they're on site. I use a situation of multiple looks at key time-sensitive standards and analyses, and I want them observing my various functions and to verify compliance and not just a file review. And again, I get it. There's definitely differing models out there, and no one way is always the best, but I can say this for sure from my own experience plus what I see in my travels, you get what you pay for here. Some models are real concerning to me. Some put out little effort or credence into a mock assessment, and it shows because they get what they put into it. So not knocking your neighbor, but who are you inviting to your mock? Is it a cursory good neighbor peek? Where they're distracted because they're so close to home and they're on their cell phone most of the time. I see that out there a lot. Something about getting away from out of town, you're a little more accessible, it seems like. When did you invite them? Is it a process where you send out a mass email looking for volunteers? I get that if you haven't been a cred manager very long and you don't understand the process and you need people and you need them now. That sometimes happens, and I feel for you in that respect. But I recommend, if you have an optimal time frame and a model, is that you would target specific mock assessors. And this goes right back to, again, to that number 3 of having a plan. You'll see in my plan that I make initial invitation. The toughest mock assessors I can find a year prior to the mock, which is about 18 months prior to my own on-site assessment. You're probably looking at your own time calendar right now going, uh-oh. But I lock them down with regular communication at the 6-month out mark. And I also recommend participating in mocks yourself. I participate in 1 or 2 all over North America, and I have commitments in the late 2017 already. And so if you want to get the good ones, you're going to have to either you get lucky on their schedule or be really timely when you grab them. And grab the mock assessors who get CALEA. They have the courage to call out concerns, and not only do they point out your shortcomings or potential shortcomings, but they offer fixed suggestions that they've seen in their travels and from their own agency. I recommend trying to not grab accreditation managers who are begrudging CALEA or their assignment, or maybe are just doing enough just to get by their own agency, or maybe doing it for the wrong reasons. And rather, I go after folks who understand how to make CALEA work to bring in enhanced value to their orgs. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll know the difference. So bottom line, I encourage you to plan your mock early and well.
Rob, I'll add to that, Melissa, while we make this transition here about the return on investment for agencies. I always tell everybody, look, this is a voluntary process. You don't have to participate in it. You participate in it because you want something out of it. And I often hope, and I always hope, that it's more than just the plaque on the wall, but rather the return on investment is about that organizational improvement thing. And so recently we've transitioned again to this model of not looking at every standard every time in certain types of assessments. But when that happens, it doesn't mean that if the accreditation manager is in charge of the Power DMS application, that they only give the assessors access to certain standards. We've seen that happen a couple of times now, where the assessors say that, hey, we're going to look at the following standards, and then within the Power DMS application, that's the only standards they allow them access to. A couple of problems with that. First of all, some standards are linking. Sometimes there's other issues that pop up that the assessors need to look at to ground themselves in how the agency does business when they're doing their on-site review. And so it's just important to open up that entire suite, if you will, of standards and standards compliance strategies that you have inside your assessment application.
Awesome, thank you. I did want to mention, I know some folks have sent in questions. We will be actually answering our questions after we get through number 10 in our next little bit here. So feel free to keep sending them in. I just want you to know that you're not being ignored. So I see your questions coming in. We will go through them here shortly. Are you ready to go to number 10, Rob?
Yes, ma'am. All right.
All right.
Last but not least, accreditation is your world, or as I like to say, make accreditation your world. I already said it before, the accred manager, whether you like it or not, by virtue of your position, you're going to get the finger pointed at them, at yourselves, if things don't go well. It's an agency-wide accomplishment if you do well, and if it goes wrong, you know where it's going to be pointed to. So I'm here to proclaim that this is almost entirely avoidable. It starts with how you view a CALEA and accreditation. Do you communicate it as a deplored assignment? I suggest a couple of mentalities within your org, and you constantly preach and push this. We like to say around here, it's not all about CALEA, but there's a little bit of CALEA in everything the agency does. Another one that's out there is CALEA is a way of doing business every day, as opposed to some event that occurs for the last 6 months every third year, the old last 6-month 911 plan. Again, creating that accreditation, reaccreditation plan. Creating and utilizing and enforcing the administrative reporting system, creating and integrating internal systems that are designed to capture the timely quality proofs that you desire. If you create these templates by using models you've seen from other agencies, or you look at the deficiencies that your mock team pointed out, if you create these templates and tweak them a little bit, they'll design to capture the compliance. I did that for our after action plan because the Chapter 46 has so many different things tied up in that ICS, and there's no way that my folks would remember them on every incident. And so I give them a template and a guide and a prompt, and that way I'm able to get these good proofs. Same thing with our operational readiness inspections. Again, create the templates for them, and somehow you got to figure out a way to reject this good enough. This should be good enough thing that we all been handed from time to time. If it's not, you got to be able to call it out like it is in a professional way, and again, be ready for some other examples. And that's what the successful accreditation managers proactively do. They get those examples from other agencies prior to the due date, and so when the next time that annual pursuit analysis is around and they're getting ready to convene their group or whatever method they use to do it, that's the time to hand the person responsible for completing that analysis 3 or 4 different examples with the points that you'd like to see in yours. And that's a good time to hand them the handout on analysis CALEA style to show them that, hey, it's more than data collection. Analysis is a broader process designed to help us see what occurred here and how can we bring value to the org and reduce and diminish our exposure to risk. Plan a strong, comprehensive mock assessment using seasoned practitioners. They don't have to be chiefs, they don't have to be accreditation managers, and they don't have to be necessarily CALEA assessors. But it's nice if you can get a nice mix of that with someone who's both a CALEA assessor and a practitioner and accreditation manager role. They're probably going to have more day-to-day hands-on experience in that arena. Put on your thick skin and thank your mock team for nitpicking you apart, and then listen to their input. And then finally, what I've been telling a lot of people lately is figure out a way to somehow enjoy the process. Well, that sounds whacked, but it's the opposite of this dreaded stress and getting buried under the enormity of the process. I mean, if you can figure out a way to take ownership and have some fun with it, hey, you're in it, so no use being the equivalent of a CALEA-oscopy, if you will, when you don't have to. And I'm sure, Craig, you're rolling over right in your grave right there on that term, but that's something I inherited here, and I don't think it has to be like that. If you are well-prepared, well-planned, and you put all those pieces in place.
Yeah, and Rob, I'd add to that, while you put me in my grave, I'll add from the depths there that, you know, one of the things that we see gets in the way of the relationship with the assessors and the accreditation managers sometimes is that there's oftentimes this unrealistic expectation between the CEO and the accreditation manager to start with. And I'll give you an example. The CEO, right or wrongly, will say, hey, I want this to be an excellent, best on-site ever. And that gets interpreted by the accreditation manager, who may be the deputy chief or may be a corporal in another division or maybe a non-sworn complement somewhere along the way, may interpret that to mean that there can't be anything wrong. And the reality of it is that you own that, and like Rob says, you got to enjoy it, you got to get neck deep in it, and you got to make it work, and you got to have responsibility. But the way that you control for that so that there's an awareness is constant communication. And I think the chief thing to make this happen well is to have time set up with your chief executive officer to talk to them about places that you know that there's weaknesses, that you anticipate problems, that you anticipate some more attention in the future. And that way, when the process yields some document or some information that suggests, hey, there's some work that needs to be done here, there's an understanding that the process is about using that finding to move the organization forward. And it's not necessarily a black mark on the agency or any other indication that the agency is not in good shape. That's what the process is for. But if the relationship is set up early where it's compartmentalized, the accreditation manager is responsible for it, he or she sees that they have to be completely successful with 100% compliance, and we start hearing all these types of things pop out here. Anytime there's a finding between the assessment team and the accreditation managers involved, it almost creates a conflictual relationship regardless of how hard everybody works to make it right. So I think the takeaway from me in it is set up strong communication, ground it in reality, and be prepared to address concerns that the agency really has, because that's what your accreditation team is going to do for you when they're there. Rob?
Those are some proven practical methods today on what I consider accreditation best practices. Melissa, you have anything to add before we move on here?
Nope, I'm ready to go to the not top 10. Are you ready for that?
Yeah, special bonus for you all today. Some practices to avoid are the not so top 10. These are just a few funnies on what not to do. Melissa's going to start us out.
All right, hold on just a second. All right. The number one is to use the language during an interview. I know what our policy says, but that's not what we really do.
Definitely want to avoid that. Another not so top 10 is recommending the flea bag hotel for the assessments, or as we like to say or kid around, the pay-by-hour establishments. The rule of thumb we suggest here is, where would you put your family up there? And just a side note, as an assessor, places with breakfast provides a nice gesture.
Absolutely. Number three is to attach a 30-minute video when you only want the assessor to view 30 seconds. If you can find a way to chop that video up, that may be in your best interest.
Number four is volunteering your assessor to wear the bite sleeve during the K-9 demonstration, or if he's a really great assessor, the new recruit OC or taser instruction.
Number five, and this one is actually one that came from, I polled some folks that was helping me with the top 10, and they said, do not ask your pack for suggestions on the best ways to hide a body.
Hopefully that's not the assessor.
Right.
This one is let the agency head take a vacation during the on-site. Announce the dates well in advance for both your mock and your regular on-site, and regularly remind them.
All right. Number seven is to accidentally forget and leave the assessment team in the conference room at night and leave your agency.
It's happened. All right, next one. Wait until the last minute to get started. I won't belabor it any farther. Gotta have a plan.
All right. Number nine is to find your doppelganger, offer them to switch places, and skip town the day before you're on site.
Finally, the last one, violate your use of force policy in an effort to get people to send you proofs. Admit it. If you've been doing this for a while and you saw you had an opportunity for proofs in someone else's disaster, right? My wife used to pray for overtime when I was a young miserly detective, which typically meant someone had to get killed. Or save your use of force for your own troops who don't play well. So that's just a little list of funnies.
Thanks, Rob. Craig, did you have any not top 10s to add to this?
Nope, I'm good to go.
All righty. The next thing we're going to do, we're just going to just take a really quick poll, one more poll, I promise, and then we'll move on to some Q&A type of things. Just want to see out of the audience if you are currently using Power DMS. So this should actually come up on your screen here in just a second. If you don't mind just taking a moment to answer that for me, we can take a peek, and then we'll move on to some Q&A here in just a moment. All right, y'all are fast. We're already at 78% of folks have already answered, so thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And if you've already taken the time to vote and you have questions you would like to submit to our panel today, feel free to start typing your questions in. As I mentioned, some of them have already come in, and I have them in a list and they're ready to go. I'm actually going to read them and kind of point them to the appropriate folks that can give the best answer. So feel free to send in your questions if you have them, and we're happy to answer in the best way we can. All right, and it looks like we are, I'm going to go ahead and close this out and share it with you. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and you can actually see that about 81% of folks in the audience today are current Power DMS users. So welcome to our Power DMS users, and of course, welcome to our non-Power DMS users. As we mentioned today, we've talked about Power DMS quite a bit. We're not really going to showcase it. But if you have questions about Power DMS or you're interested in Power DMS, certainly we will be sending out some follow-up information where you can get in contact with the right folks that can assist you. Are we ready to do some question and answer, guys?
Yes. Ready.
All right, so the first question, I'm actually going to answer the first one. I know the answer to this one. The first question that came in quite some time ago was, will you be providing a copy of the slides to the attendees? So anybody that's interested in the slides, they will be provided via email. We're going to send a follow-up email to everyone. That will include the recording of this presentation. It was recorded today. Also include a copy of the slides and also any contact information if you have interest or questions about Power DMS, we will be providing that as well. All right, the next question, and I'm going to direct this. I'm not sure if this question is better for Rob or for Craig. The question is, do I need to provide the mock assessors with partial year stats?
I'll jump in. I do. I make sure I have my tables ready because I want them weighing in on those data tables and looking for things that I missed. I look at them all the time, and sure enough, stuff jumps out at them with new sets of fresh eyes. And so the more prepared and the more actual or near like your on-site you can make it, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, and I would echo that. Rob is right on point. I mean, is it required? No. I mean, it's a mock assessment. The only requirement is what you require to put in there. But you have to remember that an assessment team, the official assessment team, is going to be there at some point, and it may be able to put you in a better state of operational readiness for that assessment anyway. And it may highlight some of those issues that you'll want to know to bring out during the assessment process as well. So is it technically required? Nope, not by CALEA. Is it a good practice? Absolutely.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. I think this one will probably be for both of you as well. On bulleted standards, i.e. less than lethal, are you required to have a proof for every less than lethal every year, such as baton, taser, etc.? I have been told during many training sessions that it is not required, but have been told by an assessor that it is needed. This would help me, and I'm sure others, with their workload.
Go ahead, Craig.
Now, grab it, Rob, and I'll follow up with some comments. Go ahead.
All right. You're going to create what I call unnecessary assessor ire if you don't follow Appendix G. Now, you have a choice as an agency, and by that I mean you choose to put one proof for all 3 years for every bullet. That's your agency choice. However, CALEA has made it an official accepted practice to put one proof in as long as you're covering all 3 years, one proof per bullet, as long as all 3 years are covered. Now, on the particular one that you're referencing in this question, it is nice as an assessor if you have, say, 4 or 5 less lethal weapons, say OC, taser, ASP, SAP, flashlight. I'm just kidding on the last couple, but you get my point. If you have multiple types, it's nice to be able to see a proof of each one in there, but it's certainly not required. If you don't have them in there, then I'm probably going to follow up. Well, not probably. I will follow up on the actual on-site. And so if you're like a lot of us, we try to get the assessor to buy off, sign off on the file that the file is sufficiently proofed on its own face with tangible proofs inside of it that has enough to prove that you're fully in compliance. So hopefully I've made that distinction clear. I would prefer to see Appendix G, but it is an agency choice if you choose not to follow it. But at some point in time, I have to verify compliance as an assessor that you adhere to those procedures and your policy within use of force guidelines for every type of weapon you have.
I think Rob would probably say this as well, but the other thing that's important to an assessor that's going through files, and you have to remember these assessors probably only do 2, maybe 3 assessments a year depending on their availability, is to be consistent in development of the proofs of compliance and actually be consistent from start to finish in how you develop the whole file, if you will. It helps to be for them to get through them, and I think Rob's point about assessor fatigue couldn't be more true. He's accurate in the degree that it's your choice in some regards, but at the same time, if you don't adhere to Appendix G, you're going to get some feedback from the assessment team that probably says, hey, you're making the process more difficult than it needs to be for your own organization, in some ways creating your own grief. If you run into a situation where you're in compliance with Appendix G as a direction, and for those, just to ground everybody, Appendix G is an appendix within each one of the standards manuals. It's in the Power DMS application as well that provides direction on how to show proofs of compliance and the amount of proofs of compliance that are needed for each bullet. But if for some reason you don't follow that, and especially if it's over the top, the assessment team is going to say, hey, they did not do a good job in prepping for the on-site, and it made it difficult for the assessment team to do their jobs. So I would be guardedly, I'd be very cautious about exceeding the Appendix G platform.
One more note real quick, Craig, is if you're doing a mock and you're bringing in your mock team and you're trying to set up the number of mock assessors, the number of days, et cetera, if you do not follow Appendix G, you're going to need extra time. It's going to take more time and assessor resources to get through every one of your documents in there. So I strongly encourage Appendix G and do your best to demonstrate full compliance.
Yeah, and if you get in there and you have an assessor who doesn't agree with you on the application Appendix G, call the assessment manager at CALEA, and that person will ensure that Appendix G is applied and not have any negative implications for the organization if the assessment team sees differently.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. The next question is, and once again, I feel like you guys are doing a great job at kind of tag teaming it. Since policies have the potential to change within an accreditation cycle, along with the agency CEO or commanders of specific areas sign off on policies, what is the best practice when it comes to upload of documents, i.e. uploading the policies on the front end of an accreditation process and adjusting them as needed, or setting reminders to upload and highlight during the final year? Question mark. Understood that Power DMS will alert when changes are made to an effective policy, but just curious what practice works best nationally and what for everybody.
Again, Craig, unless you're dying to jump in first, I'm going to go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So this is almost a standing question at every CALEA conference, and I'm blessed and fortunate to be able to go to them. And they've got some outstanding classes where they have a lot of Q&A on current best practices. And this is what gets preached there very regularly by the program managers. And again, subject to correction by Craig as soon as I'm done here, but you only need to put in your last written directive, last version. So for example here, it's not uncommon for us to update and revise and tweak and update our use of force, pursuit, and other policies several times in an accreditation review, 3-year accreditation review period. And so I only have to put my last one in there unless there's a substantive change. And one example that they use for a substantive change is, say, for example, on your temporary detention, you move from 15-minute observation periods to 30. They would consider that a substantive change, and you're probably going to want to do both and have them both in there. And so I think the rules are going to maybe change here a little bit too. A lot of people wait until the last or towards the end of their 3-year period before they put in their proofs and written directives, and that might not be a best practice. I don't subscribe to it. I keep my files, and again, I have the luxury of doing so, and hopefully you can find a method to keep your files populated with the most current written directive and your current proofs each year with that in mind. Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if you're not careful, you'll create that wave that comes over your head in that last year or 8 months or so that puts you in a state of non-recovery. Worst case scenario, they have a transition of accreditation manager, or you as the accreditation manager become ill, or something happens in the organization and you're just not prepared. So I would never wait to the last minute on anything. I would preload. The Power DMS application, I'm not an expert on this in any way on the policy side, but the reality of it is it can live within your office environment, and the changes are tracked as it goes. And I think, Melissa, you probably know more about this than I do, that document can live with the link there and track the changes as it went. So it's a little bit of a separation for us from the paper environment that we had in the past. And if you're able to afford that piece of policy to supplement the standards piece, it's a good tool for that purpose. Melissa, can you add to that?
Absolutely, Craig. Thanks. As Rob mentioned as well, and even the gentleman that asked the question mentioned that Power DMS has the ability to, once you attach a policy to the standard and the policy is then updated, you'll actually receive a notification in Power DMS that says, hey, the policy has been updated. Do you wish to update it? So in most cases, I believe the answer to that would be yes. You would actually just go ahead and update it, and you don't have to do anything but just kind of check it off, and it's already updated and attached. Unless the instance of which Rob mentioned there was a big change in the policy, in which case you would need to show both. In that case, you could adopt the new policy and also attach the old. so that you can show both. But Power DMS does allow you the opportunity to do that, and we certainly pride ourselves in having that little related standards column on the side that everybody likes to have and nobody likes to update. So if you actually use Power DMS to attach your documents, that kind of builds itself as well, and that's an added bonus. So I would say to definitely use those as your advantage, to your advantage rather, and not wait until the last minute to attach policies, as Craig and Rob both mentioned.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to add to that?
Yeah, let me add to that, because that substantive policy change is critical, especially when you get into areas like, let's just say the agency has a leadership change and the new chief decides that they're either going to prohibit or allow vehicle pursuits. And if the assessment, it happens mid-assessment period, and that's fine, but if you've got a prohibition effective halfway through the assessment, but you put proofs of compliance that show continued vehicle pursuits beyond that period, that's a red flag for assessors, and they're going to say, wait a minute, I'm not sure what the policy is relevant to the practice and when did this change. And that's the stuff you want to make sure you got your hands around so you can clearly explain that. The introduction of tasers or stop sticks or special equipment is a real substantive change that has a profound impact on the organization's position in relation to continued compliance. So just be aware of that as you consider that issue.
In summary, just to make sure, as an assessor, absent that substantive change, I'm looking for your most recent written directive when it calls for a written directive.
Great. Thanks, guys. We have quite a couple more to go. This one is actually directed to Craig. And the question is, would you consider holding a webinar of the CALEA website showing the CALEA library, policies, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually encouraged the regional program managers to do that so it's at a more manageable level. I can pass along that information again, but I think the best way to make that happen is to shoot your regional program manager an email, and those emails are posted on our website. There's a link there, and just say, hey, we'd like to have a demo, and either they'll do it individually, they'll do it with a PAC, they'll do it with a special interest group that's there. They're more than willing to make that happen, and we're willing to serve you in any way to make that accessible to you.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is, for an agency that is going for reaccred using Power DMS standards, how will their assessment be different than the gold standard, since files are looked at before in both cases, as I understand the process?
Well, I'm not so sure that it's going to be all that different. In that particular scenario you just painted, or unless I heard it incorrectly, is the only difference is instead of hard paper files being mailed off at pretty good expense and unnerving to the CRED manager, you're going to give them access through the web to their Power DMS files, and they're going to make their file reviews that way. Obviously, on a GSA, the number of files looked at is significantly smaller after the agreed upon number of files looked at during the GSA conference call prior to the determining of the files to be reviewed, as opposed to the couple hundred or so that would normally be looked on a traditional, whether it be by files or by DMS. And so I'm not so sure that there's really much of a change other than the DMS side, or excuse me, the GSA side determines lesser files looked at and more emphasis on the interviews and bringing value to the org during the on-site process.
All right. The next one is actually directed at Rob, and the question was your mock done electronically?
It was not. And while I, again, understand why some might be tempted to do so, and I'm all about leveraging technology, even though I've been doing this for so many years, it's really important for my agency in terms of getting it and understanding value being brought to the organization through the CALEA process, that my folks here have interaction, and we make a big deal out of it here. Like I said, it's not all about CALEA, but there's a little bit of CALEA in everything that we do, and you can say that about accreditation. It's important. I want my people to see that they're part of their process. It's an agency-wide accomplishment. They have their own set of nerves and concerns, and they want to get some. They want to have a practice run. They want to have a chance to see if they're going to do it right. Even your worst person, or like we affectionately refer to in this business as your worst slug, if you were to have one, of course. I don't fear having that person come out there, because when it comes down to it during an on-site and the assessors are here, their professional pride will kick in, and they're not going to sabotage the org. Their competitive spirit's going to come out, and their pride will come forth, and it'll spit out that, hey, we do things well here, and they want to impress people from the outside, and hopefully, again, it's for the right reasons. So while I understand why some agencies have to, financially or fiscally are tempted to go to a file review offsite remotely only, boy, if you can find a way to get people in there and observe your functions. I hate to admit this publicly, but I brought in tough folks, and Craig, close your ears, but they found a couple of guns in the regular population. And I need good sets of eyes to come in and see those kinds of things and point them out to us. And you need to be transparent. There's no, I would hate to have had that happen on a regular on-site.
Rob, I'll add to that a little bit too. Is I came from a accredited agency that had been accredited since 1986. So largely, I didn't know what it was to work for anything other than an accredited agency. And there was a little bit of this culture inside my organization that you hide all the bad stuff when the assessors are coming, if you will, and then you're back to normal business the next day. And that may be an overstatement, but I think the model that CALEA is really moving towards is this client-centric organizational improvement tool. And we would almost rather you say, hey, look at this from the perspective of this is what's wrong, and help us link it back to a standard. And I know that's miles away from maybe the common thinking there, but I think it's what lets Rob say the things he says now when he might not have said otherwise about guns in the normal population. Because it is not an I gotcha tool. It is not a way to play whack-a-mole. It is a strategy for you. And if in some ways, if you change business while the assessment team's there, you don't receive the full benefit of the review. And I know that's a tough pill to swallow, given the fact that sometimes you might have people in the organization that say, I want this to be the top assessment that we've ever had despite anything else that's going on. Well, that's not reasonable, and it's not really in keeping with the return on investment for the programming. So that may philosophically strike some of you as odd, but I ask you to think through that a little bit so that the process continues to work in a real meaningful way.
Great, thank you guys. We're at the 2-minute warning for our time, and we have quite a few questions. I wasn't sure how you all wanted to handle the questions. I don't know if you wanted to power through, or if you want to, if we can just do I usually do a spreadsheet of the questions that weren't covered and just kind of send that out in the follow-up. I wasn't sure what your preference was on that, guys.
Yeah, I think in the interest of covering everybody's point, because that 2-minute warning, you ought to collect those questions and let's take them that way. That way it's fair to others there. But I think in closing, as we kind of wrap this thing up, Melissa, this meeting in of itself, the opportunity to attend this, is really an indication of how Power DMS and CALEA are working collectively to accomplish similar results for organizations. And listen, we're in an affinity agreement with Power DMS. It's not the only game in town, and we know that. But it's the only one that CALEA has an affinity agreement with right now, and I don't necessarily see in that change, at least from the Commission's perspective. I want to remind you that there's 21 commissioners that govern the organization and try to make sure that we're in good shape, and we're going to continue to do that as we move forward as an organization. We think this is of value. We appreciate Power DMS's involvement in it. Rob, I appreciate your participation. And I hope in some way there's been a return on investment for those in attendance today. Thank you, each of you.
Yes, just want to say thank you as well. Thank you, Rob, for bringing your expertise, and Craig bringing your expertise as well. And just for everybody that's joined us today, thank you for taking an hour and a half of your day to join us. And we do hope that this session was helpful for you. Rob's contact information as well as mine should be viewed on your screen right now. So if you have something that you, a question that pops up or you need to follow up with us, feel free to do so via email. Also know that if you send in a question and we did not get to your question, I do apologize for that we didn't have a chance to review it on the session, but I will say that what we'll do is I can actually export the questions. I will export them into a spreadsheet, get all the answers, and then we will make sure that that goes out in that follow-up email that we're going to send out to you, along with the recording and the slides. So you will get the answer to your question. I apologize, it's not going to be right now, but we will get that to you in that follow-up email. So once again, thanks so much for your time. And Rob, I didn't know if you had any closing comments you wanted to add.
No, I just counted a real privilege to have been involved in this today, and I hope people can forgive me for my bluntness on some things there, but I'm very passionate about this. And the last thing I'll say is, again, in my 4 years of law enforcement industry here, never run across a product like DMS. It just rocks. As an assessor, it's great. As an accred manager, it's even better. We're huge fans.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for your time, and have a great day.